Cecilia, a young nun, relocated to a country that appeared to be ideal. Moving there for employment at a prestigious convent initially, she was greeted warmly by the community until she uncovered a sinister secret about her new surroundings. The story unfolds within a convent, focusing on Sister Mary, a young nun who, after praying, secretly enters the living quarters of a senior nun to steal the keys, hoping to escape. However, her escape plan is thwarted when she is trapped between the bars of the gate by one of the 3 cloaked figures pursuing her. In the struggle, she injures her leg, causing her to lose consciousness from the pain. Upon waking, she discovers she is buried alive. Cecilia is a devout believer who has just arrived in the picturesque Italian countryside for a new position. Father Sal Teschi, a priest, had offered her a role at an exclusive convent where she would care for the dying nuns in their final days. She was greeted warmly and shown around by a sister named Isabel. Isabel then led Cecilia to her room, but Isabel seemed irritated by her presence and urged her to leave before she changed her mind. However, Cecilia had already made up her mind. Later, Cecilia met and became friends with another sister named Gwen before getting ready for the ceremony. Cecilia was thrilled to see Father Teschi again after the ceremony. In a conversation with Father Teschi, he shared his story of how he fell in love with the convent, and Cecilia opened up about her own past, which inspired her to choose a life as a nun at the age of 12. Cecilia enjoyed walking on the frozen lake until the ice cracked, causing her to fall into the water. She almost drowned for 7 minutes, instantly took her position upon hearing a sob from the bathroom, where she discovered a nun in distress, kneeling and weeping, leading her to follow the sound. Upon reaching the nun, she offered her comfort and retreated, alarmed when the nun turned to face her, revealing a face without features. Suddenly, the Reverend Mother emerged, guiding her to the altar where she retrieved a large, rusty nail from a glass container. The Reverend Mother explained that this nail was taken from the cross where Jesus Christ was crucified, and she presented it to Cecilia, who noticed a hole in her hand. Cecilia fell into a deep sleep. Upon waking, she found herself restrained by multiple figures, with her hands restrained around her face. This was the end of Cecilia's nightmare. She peered through the door and spotted someone looking at her intently. Cecilia unlatched the lampshade to get a better view, but didn't see anyone by the door. The mother was conversing with everyone while Cecilia and Gwen were laughing nearby. The Reverend Mother caught sight of it and scolded the 2 young sisters for cheating on their chores, where Gwen and she had fun working hard. The young nuns cared for a sickly older nun who eventually passed away. Cecilia spotted Sister Isabel staring at her. She didn't notice Sister Isabel anymore. Later that night, she was preparing to go to sleep when an older nun suddenly trimmed her hair, which confused Cecilia, thinking it was her job to take the older nun to the clinic where other sickly nuns were staying. A few days later, while Cecilia was bathing with the other young nuns, Gwen was sharing her story of joining the convent where she lived with her ex-boyfriend, who once hid her. Gwen hid her away before she left. Her Gwen had no place to go when she stumbled upon a convent and saw nuns residing there. She believed they were fortunate to have a sanctuary where they could live, sleep, and eat without cost, so she chose to become a nun. Although it doesn't imply she no longer believes in God, she does. But her faith isn't as deep as the other nuns, Cecilia, who was merely quietly listening to Gwen. Suddenly, she fell ill and had to undergo a checkup. While waiting, she observed a figure outside, which frightened her. Cecilia was then called to the cardinal's office for questioning. The cardinal inquired if she had violated her vows by leaving the convent. Father Teschi comforted her, thinking her hesitation was due to confusion, not a lack of faith. Cecilia remained adamant that she had never violated any of her commitments after making a vow to God that left many astonished. Father Teschi inquired whether Cecilia had engaged. The doctor revisited Cecilia's case, and to their astonishment, they learned she was indeed pregnant. The cardinal and Father Teschi were overjoyed, believing Cecilia was destined to become the next Virgin Mary. They organized a ceremony to celebrate this divine intervention. However, Sister Isabel and Gwen were visibly unhappy about the situation. As Cecilia progressed into her second trimester, she began experiencing unusual symptoms and discovered one of her teeth had fallen out. Upon returning to the dining area, everyone except Gwen greeted her with smiles. Cecilia was then served breakfast by a senior nun who cautioned her against moving around too much while pregnant. Cecilia was unwinding in the bathtub when an unexpected shove sent her underwater. She realized it was Isabel who had done it, She fought back as Isabel tried to suffocate her. However, a senior nun rushed in with two younger ones. Cecilia was fine, but she was deeply shaken and bewildered by the incident, recounting Isabel's frantic screams as she was being pulled away. Her father, Teskey, was overjoyed to hear that the baby was safe, but Cecilia was in no state to be comforted. She was traumatized and confused, recounting Isabel's screams as she was being rescued. Since then, Isabel had become significantly more vigilant and wary of her fellow nuns during their walks through the corridors. She observed two nuns looking at her from a window. Suddenly, one of them leaped from the roof. Upon discovering who it was, Cecilia was shocked to find it was Isabel. They had been accompanying the other nuns to the grave of Isabel Gwen, during which Isabel was telling Cecilia to keep her eyes open and to realize that no one within the convent could be trusted. Father Teskey had caught them in conversation and inquired about their concerns, but Isabel responded by shouting at everyone, though Cecilia, who was comforting her on her bed. When a picture frame hanging on the wall became unsecured, she noticed a piece of writing behind it and discovered a Bible verse in Italian. It read 2 Corinthians 11:4, which she then searched for in her English Bible. Cecilia was taken aback when she deciphered the verse. Satan frequently disguises himself as an angel of light, and this revelation made her start to believe Gwen's account. She quietly entered Gwen's room but failed to see her there, so she tiptoed into the cardinal's office and went through her own documents. There, she found a cutout from a newspaper detailing an accident. She narrowly avoided being caught by Cecilia, who was taken aback by a sudden scream and followed the sound, leading her to peek through the keyhole to see what was happening. As she did, tears welled up in Cecilia's eyes as she saw a nun, who appeared to be faceless, perform an act of violence against Gwen. Cecilia slowly backed away from the door, only to be startled when another nun covered her mouth to stop her from speaking. It was the same nun who had shaved off a few strands of her hair, and despite her frail appearance, she managed to give her a smile and pass her along, her hair neatly wrapped around it. Cecilia, desperate for help, pleaded with the nun to assist her in escaping the convent. However, the nun's voice was filled with foreboding as she warned Cecilia that escape was impossible. Nurses were often awakened by the sound of Cecilia's cries, and Father Tesh, along with them, hurried to Cecilia's room to find her severely injured. Cecilia pleaded with Father Tesh to save her. Father Tesh decided to take her to the nearest hospital. It was all a ruse. A nurse remained by Cecilia's side, praying beside her bed, when she noticed a peculiar smell. Upon further investigation, she discovered a bag under the bed, which contained the blood of a chicken. Father Tesh received a call and learned that Cecilia had been faking a miscarriage to escape. Cecilia had realized she had been discovered and fled from the car, and her father, Teskey, quickly caught her. She was then brought back to the convent, where a senior nun harshly washed her while scolding her for trying to flee. Cecilia was then confined to a wheelchair near the crucifixion nail's edge, where Father Teskey, a geneticist before becoming a priest, planned to use his expertise in genetics to create a new Jesus Christ. He had previously failed in his attempts until Cecilia came into his life, at which point he was able to successfully bring forth another Virgin Mary, who would give birth to the new Jesus. Father Teskey took Cecilia to the basement, where he showed her the jars holding the fetuses. Only a few of the fetuses appeared normal, who forced his daughter Cecilia into another chamber. His assistant Deacon Enzo then restrained Cecilia by pulling her leg, intending to inflict burns on her feet in the shape of a cross. Following this, Cecilia was confined to a room to ensure she wouldn't try to escape once again during her third trimester. During this time, Cecilia confided in the cardinal, her eyes streaming with tears as she extracted a nail from her finger. The doctor examined her unborn child before departing with the Reverend Mother, who was occupied with observing the baby through a monitor. In a moment of desperation, Cecilia discreetly took the crucifix and struck the Reverend Mother with it, killing her instantly. As Cecilia emerged from her room, she suppressed the scream of agony she was about to let out due to her water breaking. The cardinal was smoking while listening to the choir sing. Cecilia managed to sneak up behind him, killing him by strangling him with her rosary, and was subsequently apprehended by Dr. Gallo, who fled in terror. Cecilia didn't bat an eye at him and made a beeline for the cellar, drenching the father's lab with alcohol and igniting a match when the Father Teskey showed up. Cecilia's stomach sore again, and she collapsed in agony. Cecilia managed to lock the Father Teskey in the lab, but the priest caught her by her hair, stopping her from fleeing. She tried to break free by grabbing the Father Teskey's finger, but he pulled her back with his other hand. Cecilia lit her lighter and tossed it on the floor, igniting the lab and Father Teskey. Cecilia descended the stairs and found herself in the underground catacombs under the convent. She ran aimlessly, searching for an exit, only to pause for a moment as fear began to rise within her. She heard a voice calling out to her and looked around the room, feeling terrified. As she switched on the lights and discovered Gwen's injured body, she exited the room in search of an exit, only to find a gap large enough for her to squeeze through. However, her father Teskey intercepted her just as she was about to make her escape, initiating a series of rituals while attempting to extract Cecilia's unborn child. Cecilia endured immense pain but managed to snatch a crucifixion nail and use it to stab her father, and Cecilia emerged through the opening, collapsing on the ground in agony. She cried out as her baby Cecilia was born. Although the baby was not visible, its existence was acknowledged through the disturbing sounds it emitted. Cecilia proceeded to sever the umbilical cord with her teeth and seized a nearby rock, unleashing a scream as she struck her monstrous baby with it.